And we are live. Hello, everyone. My name is Mario Viviani, and I am with the Amazon Developer Relations team. And as every Tuesday, I want to welcome you to the Amazon Fireside Chat. As usual, I am accompanied by my wonderful colleague, Anisha. Anisha, want to introduce yourself?
Hey guys, I'm Anisha. I'm on Mario's team in DevRel here at Amazon. I'm a developer evangelist specializing in apps and games, and we have a really cool topic for you today. So I'll let Mario introduce the topic.
Absolutely. So today we are going to talk about monetization, and in particular, we are going to talk about in-app purchase and the App Store SDK, and how can you add those features to your applications. Today we are in particular going to zoom in on the Android side of things, but if you're a gaming developer, keep in mind that most of the tools that we're talking about today and the best practices that apply to monetization and in-app purchase do apply to games as well. So as usual, before we jump in, a little bit of housekeeping. Please, we are live here every Tuesday at 6 p.m. So make sure to like and subscribe to our channel here on Twitch. If you're following us on YouTube, join us on, like us and follow us on YouTube as well. And please be respectful, use respectful language when you interact with us using the chat. So if you have any question as we go through the fireside chat today, please add your comments and question in the chat on YouTube or on Twitch, and we'll do our best to try to answer your questions. We'll have quite a lot to cover today, and I am very happy to say that today I'm actually going to take a little bit of a backseat, and Anisha is going to pretty much walk you guys through all the wonders of in-app purchase and the App Store SDK. So I'll be monitoring the comments area in the chat. So please, add your questions there, and we'll jump straight in. So without further ado, and also the other thing I wanted to mention is here's our Twitter handles here. Mario's the one is mine, and Anisha has hers there as well. So please follow us, and also make sure to follow all the links up there, and follow us on all of our channels because we have quite a lot coming. And later today, we will share a very cool thing that is happening today. So, but no spoilers. So, Anisha, why don't we jump in?
Let's do it.
All right. So, as I said before, today we are going to talk about the Amazon in-app purchase API and the App Store SDK. And before Anisha jumps in and talks about all the details about the implementation and the different nuances, I thought it was good to have a little bit of an introduction to the monetization models that are around for apps and games, and then jump into why is it specifically important to use the Amazon in-app purchase API. So I think that Anisha will now share the screen, but let's take a second because it looks like we have a couple of hiccups. So meanwhile,
sorry, here we go.
Oh, here we go. We are straight in. So amazing. Thank you, Anisha. So wonderful app monetization models. If we look back around the early days of apps development in apps monetization, there was, I would say, one very big monetization model. I'm talking about paid applications. These were the times where, I'm talking about almost 10 years ago, where, you would come in and just publish your app, sometimes for free, and then we introduce like a full-blown price to just purchase your app. However, that was a kind of a big showstopper for a lot of customers, because in order to consume your app, they firstly had to know they firstly had to purchase it. which is a big blocker if you think about it. Like very often you want to know what you're buying, and paid apps did offer this kind of trade-off. So another model came in afterwards, which is by all means still very much used, which is advertisement. Advertisement as the opportunity to offer the developers the opportunity to offer the content mostly for free, and then to monetize just through sheer volume. Of course, one of the challenges with advertisement is that being a volumed related game, if you don't really have a lot of volume and talking about hundreds of thousands or millions of viewers on your page and on your app, it can become challenging to monetize your content. So in particular, when it comes to games and afterwards when it comes to content-driven applications, there is another model that became hugely popular in the apps and games ecosystem, which is in-app items. So in-app items offers basically the best of both worlds of paid apps and advertisement, because you can potentially offer your app for free for download. So there is no blocker to access and downloading the app. And customer can start, checking out your application and maybe even start playing with it a little bit. And then you can gate premium content behind the paywall inside the application. And there are a lot of different, items that we can use that can be used there in terms of in-app items. There are entitlements that are consumables, and then there is one monetization model when it comes to in-app items that is now extremely popular for in-app items, which is subscriptions. And subscriptions is, I would say, the extreme side of the in-app items, because subscription, on top of what you already have with entitlements and consumables, they already have additional flags and criteria that you have to apply. For example, you might have a free period after which your subscription kicks in. You might have different type of subscription based on the tier that you want to offer, and so on. However, setting up something like in-app items and subscriptions, it is a fairly daunting exercise if you have to build all that ecosystem by yourself. So the great thing is that Amazon actually offers an API, which is the Amazon in-app purchase API, to both manage in-app items and in-app purchase and subscriptions. Technically, as you will see later today, subscriptions are just a subset, a superset, I would say, of in-app items. They are treated exactly in the same way. They are, by all means, in-app items. So why should you use the Amazon in-app purchase API? So there are a few advantages. First of all, as I said, it provides in-app purchase item, entitlements, and subscriptions. The second one is that it handles the purchase flow, the payment processing, all the receipts management, and even the rights management straight from the API and the service behind it. And the other great thing is that it leverages Amazon one-click setting when you're making a purchase. So let's think about a situation where there is a customer using an Amazon device, let's say a Fire TV or a Fire tablet, and they want to subscribe to something. By using Amazon in a purchase and subscription API, the customer is already logged in with their Amazon account and with their payment credentials that they use on Amazon. That means that they are literally one click away from making a purchase. And the Amazon in a purchase and subscription API makes that experience very, very simple for the customer and very straightforward. So it's about reducing that time to purchase or time to commitment that customers have when they engage with premium content. So that was kind of an initial introduction. I will now pass over to Anisha, which will navigate through the intricacies of actually managing the in-app purchase API, and in particular starting with installing the Amazon SDK.
Hey Mario, thank you. Sorry, my PowerPoint just seems to have given up on me today. Give me a second. I'm going to add the slides back.
No worries.
1 second. There we go. So we were talking about the Amazon App Store SDK for in-app purchasing. So the App Store SDK is what is replacing the in-app purchasing API. So the App Store SDK is a new product, and it will replace the previous version of the SDK, which was IPv2. Using the App Store SDK for new apps, you can submit to the Amazon App Store, and you can continue to use IPv2 for any existing apps or transition them to the new App Store SDK. So it differs from the old SDK in a couple of ways, and I want to go through those changes with you briefly. So there's a few key changes, and some of them surround digital rights management. So digital rights management is how you can implement digital rights within your application. But I won't go into this in too much detail because we have some really great videos on YouTube which go into how you can implement DRM and how you can enforce it, and a lot more into detail around the changes behind DRM. But briefly, Amazon will no longer enforce DRM for your app. Previously, when you uploaded Android APKs into the Amazon App Store, you had the option to select yes or no on the APK Files tab with whether or not you wanted Amazon to implement DRM. However, now Amazon won't add this wrapper around your APK after you submit it. Instead, if you want digital rights management for your Android app, you need to take some extra steps to incorporate some license checking functions in your app through the DRM API. Secondly, the in-app purchasing API is no longer available as a separate jar file. So previously, when you wanted in-app functionality, you downloaded a standalone in-app purchasing jar file and incorporated it into your app. However, now it is bundled with the App Store SDK jar file.
Awesome. Anisha, before we move in, I just want to pop in with one question
Sure.
from the audience. We were asked, would love if one day you could do an example project with a code walkthrough. Stay tuned because that's exactly what we're going to do today. It's not just a presentation. We will actually show a real world scenario of that with code.
Yes.
Sorry, Anisha.
No problem. Yeah, so guys, stay tuned because I'm just going through like the infrastructure, and then I'm gonna get into the code. So I just want to walk you through how, if you wanted to download the SDK, you can. So first step is, yes, go onto the developer portal, download the SDK, and this will come with the in-app purchasing jar file, API documentation, and some code examples. I'll walk in through those code examples briefly. The second step would be to remove your previous in-app purchasing jar file and any references you may have had, and delete the old SDK folder from the libs folder within your application. So as you can see, this video is just doing that. Just delete it from your application. Secondly is to configure the new version of your app with a public key. So if you're an existing developer, you'll have to create a new version of your app. If you are a new developer, you can head over to the developer portal with your developer account, create a new app, and fill in the required credentials. And once you've done that, it will create a new version of your app. Once you've done this, you can head over. Oops, sorry. Once you've done this, it's just when you do live demos that PowerPoint decides to give up. So
as usual.
Okay, so this little video is just showing what I was talking about. So when you head over to the developer portal, once you create that new application, you can then head over to the APK Files tab, which is what I click here, and you will see a link for your public key in the upper right-hand area. Once you click that, it will contain a dialog box which will give you that authentication PEM key. And once you download it, you can copy paste it into the main folder of your app. So that's app source, then main. Create an assets folder and copy in the App Store authentication PEM file. It's So one thing to note is that public key is unique per app. So not per user, but unique per app. And what it does is it helps establish a secure connection channel between the Amazon App Store and your application. All these steps that I'm going through are also in a video we have on YouTube. So I'm just kind of briefly jumping through them just so you know like how to configure your app with the public key. So next, you want to add the SDK to your app itself. And to ensure your app is always updated with the latest version of the SDK, you can integrate your app with Maven. So this example just shows you how to get the latest version of the App Store SDK if you're using Maven. And in this example, I'm using Major version 3. However, you can also define domain-specific specific versions or wildcards. Using wildcards is not a suitable option, I would say, for a live project because you may see unforeseen stability issues, say if we upgrade to a new version and your app isn't entirely compatible with it. However, wildcards are probably really good to use while you're debugging and testing your project with the latest version of the SDK. So what you need to do is replace any segment of the major version with the plus to use the latest iteration. You need to also make sure that your project's top-level build Gradle has Maven Central Repository defined or added otherwise, like shown in the second snippet of code in this slide. Last, or alternatively, you can add the SDK jar file directly into your project. And to do this, you open your app's build Gradle file and add a dependency to the Amazon App Store SDK version that you downloaded, or depending on the version you want to use. For example, in this, I'm referring to 3.0.2. So the code would look like this snippet here. However, if you have multiple dependencies, instead of referring to a specific jar file, you can reference all the jar files more generically as shown there. So once you've done that, you copy in the jar file from the downloaded SDK into the libs folder within your app. And that's it. Your app should be upgraded to the new SDK version, and you would be able to submit a version of your app. That's if you don't want to use, so nothing will have changed from the old IAP to the new App Store SDK. Once you change over to the new SDK, your app should work exactly the same. Again, like that was a bit of a whirlwind, but we have a really good video on how you can download this on YouTube. So I don't want to spend too much time because I know you guys are here to see real code. So let's go into that. Unless, Mario, you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, that's great. I think I agree that the using the Maven approach is probably the easiest one.
Definitely.
A lot of developers still like to use jars. So that's fine. I will not cast judgment here, but I think you gave very good breakdown of the initial setup, and I don't see any question. Guys, please, if there anything is not clear, please add your questions in there, and I will be monitoring the chat if there is anything. But Anisha, by all means, continue.
Cool. So let's jump into what in-app items you can have and how to create these in the developer portal. So one thing to note is that you need to have an app on the developer portal before you can add any of these in-app items to your application. So to do this, you'd have to create and submit the in-app purchase items for your in-app purchase integrated application before you can submit an app to the App Store. So Amazon won't test your app until both the app and your in-app items are submitted. So just keep that in mind. So if things aren't working, that might be why. So just keep that in mind for future app development. But let's jump into what an in-app item could look like. So with our in-app items, there are 3 kinds, and we break them into consumables, entitlements, and subscriptions. These items share the following information in common. So like title, your SKU, content delivery, availability and pricing, description, and images. Where subscriptions, on top of having all those items, will also have your subscription period and whether or not it's a free trial. So how would we test these in-app items and subscriptions? So we wanted to go through subscriptions because particularly they're the most complex, and if you can understand how to implement subscriptions, consumables and entitlements will probably be a lot easier. So to go through the steps, the first thing is to configure the in-app items on the dev portal, as I mentioned. Secondly is to retrieve a JSON file of the list of your in-app items. And don't be scared, I'm going to go through all these steps in more detail. Third is to install the Amazon App Tester on your test device. And then is to launch and test your in-app purchasing app with a subscription. So first things first is, how do we add those in-app items to your on the developer portal? So these are just screenshots. If you to log into your developer portal, you will see the exact same screen. So the first thing to do is click on that little button there that says add single in-app item. You could also do multiple, but I want to go through adding a single one because it's a bit easier for us to walk through. So when you click on that button, you'll be asked to choose whether you want to create a consumable, an entitlement, or a subscription. So for the sake of this example, I'm going to go with subscription. So once you create a new subscription, you'll be presented with this screen. And here you enter the title of your subscription, which is just a string containing the title of your description of your item, and a subscription SKU. So the SKU is a unique string that becomes the ID for the item. And for this example, I've got com.myapp.subscriptions. And the SKU must be unique across all in-app items in all your apps. So it has to be completely unique to this particular in-app purchasing item that you want to create. The SKU used by your app must match the SKU that you will submit to the Amazon App Store eventually, and they are case sensitive. So the SKU has a max length of 150 characters and can contain any characters from A to Z or 0 to 9, among other things. I'm sure, when you go into this, you will be given prompts to tell you whether or not your SKU matches with the criteria. If you're creating a subscription item, this SKU would then become part of a parent SKU for the subscription term that you'll create later. And if that doesn't make sense now, I will be explaining what the parent SKU is in a few minutes. So once you've created your title and you've created your SKU, you'll be presented with this screen. So this lets you add your description and images for your subscription. So you can use the checkbox. You can use localization as well to create the title and description for your different locales. And when you click on this, you'll be given checkboxes, and you can select every language that your app has been localized into and for which you want to submit a localized APK. So the next screen that you'll be presented is to add your subscription terms. And this is something you have to create. So you have to create new terms for your subscriptions. And terms are defined as the subscription periods that you provide to your customer. Each term has a unique title and SKU. So you will have the subscription term, which can be the start date of purchase, and it's valid for periods of time like weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, or quarterly, or annually. And there's a lot of options you can go through. Secondly, you will have to enter an SKU. So using the same guidelines as your parent SKU, but these correspond to your subscription term. So for example, if I had .com subscriptions, my subscriptions as my parent, I can have com.mysubscriptions.weekly as my term SKU. And this will be your child SKU. So the other one was your parent SKU, and this will be your child SKU for the subscription. And I think the last thing you need to do is add pricing information. So here you can specify whether it's a free trial or whether you want it to be paid, and you can fill in the costs for the subscription, and you can specify whether or not you want the free trial to be for a period of, say, 7 days or 3 months. You can define all of this in this screen here. So once you've created this subscription or entitlement or consumable, you will then be able to download a JSON file which contains all the information of all the items that you created. And this is really important for when we want to test our app. So once you created it, you click this button here, which says export multiple in-app purchases, and this will download your SDK tested JSON file. This SDK JSON file will look a little bit like this. So it has all the information we put in, so the description, the title, the term. You can see the child SKU for the subscription we created, which was for a fixed period of time. And the one in the JSON, which is the subscription parent, is that parent SKU for your entire subscription. So for your magazine, for example, and your child subscription would be like the subscription terms for, say, the month. So why is this file so important? So it's really important for when you're using the app tester. And if this is the first time you're hearing about the app tester, I'm going to show you a really cool demo of how this works in just a second. But in order to use this SDK tested JSON file, first thing you need to do is push it onto your test device. So this could be your Fire device or your Fire TV device. So make sure you push it using this command. So adb push your JSON file folder and then the path to an SD card on your device. So this is, I'll just leave this here on screen for a few seconds if you want to note it down, but it's in the documentation as well if you forget. And this will push all your subscription items. So here I've got two, for example. I've got one for a $5 subscription and one for a $12 subscription. So once I've pushed this to my device, I can then use the app tester from the Amazon App Store to test my subscription. So this is just a screenshot from the app tester, and I'm going to show you a live demo as soon as I've just gone through the screens that you will see on my Fire device. So the first screen you'll see is the home screen. So you will be able to test your in-app purchasing API. Once you've got to that screen, you'll be able to see this screen, which shows all the different settings I can access. For example, the in-app items in my JSON file, which is what will show me that JSON file of my subscriptions. So this is all really cool, but we want to see it live, don't we? So let me switch over to my device. And in the meantime, Mario, do you have anything to add?
No, not really. I think this is all great and a great breakdown. I'm checking to see if there is any question or comment, but I think everyone is eager to see the live demo.
Okay,
so,
give me
meanwhile, again, I want to say again, if you have any question, please post it in the chat. YouTube or Twitch, doesn't matter. But here we go. We have the live demo.
Cool. So I am holding my Fire device. So it's a live demo. So if anything goes wrong, I'm praying to the demo gods. But this is just a example app. So this is my home screen. What I've got here is a example app that I created just to test out the in-app purchasing API. So it's a very simple app. All I can do is click on this button which says buy subscription. Once I click on that, I'm presented with that in-app purchasing interface where it shows me the different subscriptions I can buy. And for example, whether they're quarterly subscriptions or, for example, the $5 one is also a quarterly subscription. If you decided it was a different fixed term for your subscriptions, this would also show up here. So in this case, I've already subscribed. So it will give me this little pop-up that says you already subscribed to this item. And you've got a little screen here that also, a little note here that also says I am subscribed. If I were to try buy the $12 one, since I've already subscribed, it's the same information. So how do I test this? So if I go back and I go to my app tester, which I downloaded it previously, I'm presented with that screen I showed you on the slides, and I can go in and see the exact same thing. So I've got my user account settings, my subscription purchase settings, my response settings, and managing my transactions file, and that in-app purchasing JSON file that I had put on my device. So that's all here. So if I click manage subscriptions, I can delete all the subscriptions for the user that I had registered on my demo application. Now, if I go back to my demo app, you can see that my subscriptions are gone. So I can now test how I can actually buy them again. So if I were to click on subscribe, it processes my subscription order. So I'm going to jump into all the code of how this all works in just a few minutes, but I just wanted to show you how easy it is to test once you have that JSON file, and we're using the live the app tester. I'll just stop here for any questions because it seems like we have a few, and if Mario wants to add anything else.
The only thing that I want to add, thank you, Anisha, is that the UI that you see when that you saw when Anisha was clicking on buy subscription that pops up, the UI is what the app tester provides. So your customers will actually see a much richer and nicer UI, which is attuned to the theme of the Fire device that they're buying it on. So Fire TV has a very nice landscape experience, and the Fire tablets has a much richer and much nicer portrait experience. So this is just for simplicity of use. It will prompt a test UI that will allow you to purchase a specific subscription or use a specific in-app item, depending on what type of item are you trying to purchase as you're testing it. So your customers will have a very similar experience to what you have, just with the nicer UI. There is one question from Anshang. Great demo. Is the code for demo public? So most of the code that Anisha is going to show right now is in our documentation. So if you go on the link that I'm about to share in the chat, you'll be able to access all the documentation for the App Store SDK. And there is a lot of code snippets related to what Anisha is going to show in a second that you can use in your app as well. Great. So let me actually, as you set up the next slide, I will share the transition to App Store SDK link, which is the great starting point to then leverage this. To then leverage these links.
Cool.
All right.
Awesome. So now we're on to the even more exciting part, which is the actual code. So Mario, just let me know if my screen disappears because PowerPoint seems
all
to
good for
me.
now.
So the under the hood, how does this in-app purchasing SDK work? So to break it down, there's 4 main components. So we have the purchasing service, we have Amazon, we have the response receiver, and we have the purchasing listener. So the purchasing service, response receiver, and purchasing listener will sit within your application. And the main components and how do they work? So the purchasing service is a class that you will define that initiates requests through is a class within the in-app purchasing SDK that initiates requests through the Amazon App Store. And it is what you as the developer would use to send requests to Amazon. Second is the response receiver. So this is a class that receives broadcasts intents from the Amazon App Store. And what it does is it awaits commands from Amazon. So, for example, when your app has to check if a user is actually subscribed to content, this will go through the response receiver. And then we have the purchasing listener. So this is an interface that will receive the async responses to the requests initiated by that purchasing service. And it also contains all the callbacks for the action that your app needs to take. So I'll go through like a user example in just a second. I want to briefly break down all these different components a little bit more and show you what they look like in Android Studio as well. So the first thing when you're setting up your app is to add the response receiver to the Android manifest. So the in-app purchasing API performs all its activities in an asynchronous manner. So your app needs to be able to receive broadcast intents from the Amazon App Store via the response receiver class. And this class is never directly used in your app, but for your app to receive intents, you must add an entry for that response receiver within your Android manifest XML file. Then the first step to actually setting things up within your app is to initialize the purchasing listener. So you initialize this, you implement and register this purchasing listener in the onCreate method so that your app can listen for and process the callbacks triggered by that response receiver we just saw. And this little snippet of code on screen shows you how on a demo app, you can register the purchasing listener in the main activity of your app. And this method is the mechanism through which those callbacks will occur. So you should call register listener before you call any of the other methods in your purchasing service class to ensure that everything does go through your purchasing service. The next step that we would have to implement is to fetch the user and receipts data. And to do this, we use methods in the purchasing service class, which is used to retrieve various types of information, make purchases, and to notify Amazon about that fulfillment of a purchase. And we define in the onResume 3 methods. And we call these 3 methods in that onResume. So the purchasing service is what we'll talk to Amazon. And what we want is to be able to get user data, to get purchase updates, and to get product data. So these 3 methods, the first being get user data, is what is used to retrieve the app-specific ID for the user who is currently logged on. For example, if a user switched accounts or if multiple users accessed your app on the same device, this call will help you make sure that the receipts that you retrieve are for the current user account. The second method we want to call is the get purchase updates method, which retrieves all purchase transactions by users since the last time that method was called. So that's all the subscription and entitlement purchases across all devices. We want to be able to get all that data. So you need to call the get purchase update in the onResume method to ensure that you're getting those latest updates. And this method takes in a Boolean parameter, so true or false, called reset. And if we set this value to true or false, depending on how much information we want to retrieve, we recommend setting this to false because false returns a paginated response of your purchase history since the last call to the get purchase updates method. Whereas true retrieves a user's entire purchase history. And in this case, you'll probably need to store that data somewhere, either server-side in cache or just hold everything in memory. So it's probably easier to be able to return the paginated response of the purchase history. And the final call we would make would be to get product data. And this is a call to retrieve the item data for all the SKUs that you defined within the developer console to display within your app. So further to the purchasing service, we want to look at the purchasing listener. So this is what we'll listen to those. This is what we'll process and listen for those async callbacks to all those different functions that we just talked about. So every call you initiate via the purchasing service will respond in a corresponding response received by this purchasing listener. So each of those methods that we called, so on user data, will have a corresponding response to itself. So this response will be a response object. And on user data response will have a response object that will give you back the user ID and the marketplace of the currently logged in user. And this is invoked after that get user data call. The second would be on purchase updates response. And this is invoked after that call to get purchase updates. And this is what will retrieve that purchase history that we just spoke about. And this is what we recommend you persist to the returned purchase update response data and query the system only for updates. The third response we'll get is for the call that we made to get product data request. And this is what will retrieve all that information about the SKUs you'd like to sell from your app. And the last one the response we'll get is what is invoked after we call the purchase method on the purchase service, which is what is used to determine the status of a purchase and to trigger that purchase. So let's jump into each one of these a little bit more. So the first would be the user data response, which was from the get user data request. And this is what provides the app specific user ID for the currently logged in user. So again, like it's just that user data that you need. And in this example, I'm also persisting the user ID and marketplace into memory, so we can use it further in our app if we need to. Let's look at the product data response. So this is when we get back the item data and it's keyed by SKU. So in this method, we also can validate our SKU so that a user's purchase doesn't accidentally fail due to an invalid SKU. So if the request status is successful, we'll retrieve the product data mapped to those SKUs displayed in the app. Additionally, if the request status is successful, but there is unavailable SKUs, we can call purchase updates response and the method of get unavailable SKUs to retrieve the product data for those invalid SKUs and prevent your app users from being able to purchase these products. So it's useful information for if we want to make sure that the user has a good user journey experience and we don't want them to be able to purchase products that are unavailable. And so the final step is the main one, which is how do we make a purchase? So this is a little snippet from my demo app, which we just saw. And this is the code for that button. So if we were to click that button, it would trigger the purchasing service purchase method with the parent SKU as a parameter. And this will run and initialize a purchase. So once the purchase is initialized, this will trigger the onPurchase response method, which will provide the status of a purchase initialized within the application. So if the request is successful, we will call the notify fulfillment method. Again, this is part of the purchasing service. And once we call that notify fulfillment method, we can send off the fulfillment result of that specified receipt ID that we get. If the purchase response status has failed, this could also just mean that the user has canceled their purchase before completion. So once this is triggered, the response returned by the get purchase updates will further trigger the purchasing listener on purchase updates response callback that we just saw in the on resume. So once we have the purchase initialized and we have the purchase updates response, once that callback is triggered, the purchase update on purchase updates response will be triggered. So this is triggered, and we can check the status of whether or not the request was successful. So if the request status is successful, we can process each receipt. So you can use the get receipt status method to retrieve all the details about the receipts. And the second part is to handle the pagination that we spoke about. And for this, we get the value for the purchasing update response method of has more. So in the second part of in the if part of the method, we can check whether or not there is additional results, and if that if get purchase updates returns true, we can make another call to get purchase updates to retrieve the further ones. So again, this is just the building blocks of how you would set up your in-app purchasing SDK. But again, I want to show this to you in Android Studio. These are just the snippets of the code. So how does this actually work in Android Studio? And while I get that up, Mario, do you want to add anything to?
No, that was great. One thing that I want to call out is that out of all the callbacks that we just saw, you don't have to use all of them. Like, for example, the get product updates, you can use that if you need to retrieve the items for and you, let's say, for example, you need to display them at screen, or you want to, like Anisha said, if you want to cross check that the item that is being purchased is the correct one. But you don't necessarily have to. Like, you might have only to implement a feature where you have one specific subscription, just one item, so you don't have to retrieve it all the time. And then you just have to make sure that you have the right, purchase method to allow the purchase, and get purchase update to verify if the customer is entitled. So I think it's good to have a full walkthrough of the API, like the one that we just had. But again, your implementation of in-app purchase, in particular when it comes to subscriptions, sometimes is actually fairly straightforward and easy, where you only use get purchase and get updates, which are also the first one calls the other as well as soon as you make the first purchase as well. But yeah, it's a great run through, Anisha. So yeah, feel free to show Android Studio.
Yeah, so again, this is just the code for that demo app I showed you on my Fire device. So this is the code for it. Most of it sits within the main activity. So here we have the initialization of the current user ID and current marketplace that I said I wanted to persist. And then on the onCreate method, we can see the the setup of the purchasing listener that I spoke about. So this has to happen first, again, as mentioned, so that we can listen for those responses. So this is, again, just the exact code that I showed. I just wanted to show it to you live. After we have that purchasing listener on the onCreate, we want to set up we want to make those calls to the purchasing service to get the data that we need. So on the onResume, we have the purchasing service, get user data, the get purchase updates, and the get product data. So those would all be triggered. Then we have the setup of the purchasing listener. So this is those 4 functions I said that we're listening for. So the on user data response, which will get us back the user ID and the marketplace. So that's that switch statement right there. If it's successful, we save it. And if not, we're just going to break out of this. Then the next method that we wanted to trigger was the get product data. So that's this one here. Again, if it's successful, we'll map those SKUs. And if it fails, we'll just break out of it. And we can check for the unavailable ones and give prompts to the user that this is unavailable if that's what we want to do. And the on purchase response. So this is the response for the triggering of that button to trigger the method of purchase on the purchasing service. And if successful, we again notify the fulfillment that this has happened and we can get the receipt. And this triggers the last call to the on purchase updates response, which we can get back the receipt ID and display that message to the user that, sorry, you're subscribed, or again, this has failed. So that is pretty much it. That's my main activity, and I think I've gone through the methods. We are in the process of making this publicly available, so do stay tuned. But if not, make sure you play around with the app tester with your own JSON file of your own in-app purchasing items.
Absolutely. Thank you, Anisha. And as I said before, I want to reiterate for those that might have joined a bit later, everything that we said today is available in our documentation. And I will share again the link. You can find this short link. You can find a link to transition into the App Store Sdk, which is a good starting point to then go through the entire in-app purchase implementation. So that was a lot of information. Don't worry, this session is being recorded, so you can rewatch it here on Twitch. You can also watch it on YouTube if you want. It's going to be available always to you. And as usual, if you have any question, please pop into the comments. And after the session, you can always reach out to us. So I will remove the link, and here's again our contacts, and you can go also on at Amazon App Dev and ping us a question there. We'll do our best to get back to you. If you have additional questions, you can also go on our on our developer portal, which is developer.amazon.com. You can also check out our blog, the developer.amazon.com/blog. And I will give you one good reason today on why you should go and check it out, because literally a few minutes ago, we released a new announcement, which is that customers can now preview the Amazon App Store on Windows 11. Why is that a big news? Because it's the new advancement of the collaboration between Microsoft and Amazon about bringing Android applications to Windows 11, which is a big deal. I'll give you one on top of many reasons on why it's cool to bring your Android apps to Amazon, to Windows 11 with Amazon, is that everything that you saw today about the Amazon in-app purchase API will work in your apps on Windows 11. So if you implement in-app purchase there, when you'll be able to publish your apps on the Amazon App Store, all those will work out of the box, even on Windows, which is great. So you can go and check out the blog. The bottom line is that customers in the US right now, it's still in preview, that have access to Windows 11 will be able to access more than 1,000 applications on Amazon App Store, which is a big improvement over the previous version that was only available to Windows insiders. Right now, if you have a Windows 11 machine and you have a US-based Amazon account, you can go and check out apps. Is also big news for developers, because again, if you fulfill those conditions as well, you can go and start testing at least your applications and see if they're compatible with Windows, which is a great starting point as we work into expanding more. I don't want to give too much away though, because the next session that we'll do next week on Tuesday is going to be dedicated to testing your Android applications to Windows 11, and we will have a very cool demo that we can show you, where we will have Android apps running from Android Studio straight into Windows 11 in Windows 11. So let's see if there are more questions. I don't see questions. I see that a lot of you guys enjoyed today's session, which is great to see. Again, we're always here, and don't forget to like and subscribe. So you can be notified even next week. Check out our Twitter handles as well. And I don't know, we still have a couple minutes, so if there is any question, Anisha and I are here to try answering your question. Yeah, Anisha, that was a great presentation, and at the end, the demo gods were with us. Like I would say.
Demo gods did, didn't they? But yeah, guys, if you've gotten through this and you yourself with your application, not just this session, if you've gotten through the whole process yourself, there are a couple of steps you can take afterwards, which is to use like our live app testing to actually test your app live. And you can set up like receipt verification using the receipt verification service. So there is a lot more you can also add on top of this. But if you wanted to just implement in-app purchasing and test it out in like a couple of minutes, go through the steps I just mentioned.
Wonderful. Absolutely. There's so many different ways that you can test your applications. I personally love to test on a physical device. I think at the end that is the best experience possible. But live app testing is also great as you're getting about ready to go into production. And the other thing that I always mention is, if you don't have an Amazon developer account, registering an Amazon developer account is super uber easy, I would say. Just go on developer.amazon.com and click on developer console, and you will be automatically prompted to create your developer account. And guess what? If you have an Amazon customer account, you can use that account as your developer account, which is handy. Wonderful. So we are actually at time, and I don't see more questions. So I would say that we can probably close today's session. Thanks again for being tuned, for stay tuned for with us today. Thank you, Anisha, for your wonderful presentation today. Appreciate it.
Thank
And
you.
I guess that we will see you guys next week with Android apps on Windows 11. It's gonna be a cool session. Don't miss it.
Definitely. Can't wait.
Cool.
See you guys. Thank you. Bye.
See you guys. Thank you. Bye bye.